can be are beyond the bounds of what we could have even imagined all those years ago. As anyone who works with Carol knows, Carol is generative. The ease with which ideas and potential courses of action come into her mind on most any subject is a testament to her curiosity and her creativity. But Carol is also tenacious. She holds us all to account for following through on our end of the bargain when it comes to our commitments. Most of all, however, Carol is compassionate. She is true to her calling. Her heart is pure, and this is clear when you see her work with people from every walk of life. Whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or an inmate in the county jail, what you will receive from Carol is human dignity. It has been my sincere and ineffable honor to have worked closely with Carol throughout her career at Colloquium. And as she comes to the microphone for her remarks tonight, I can assure you of one thing. If you listen closely, you will be a more educated person. You will learn something that will help you make our society better. Thank you, Carol. Rick.
Well, if I were smart, I'd just sit down and shut up. Rabbi Abraham Heschel said that if the only prayer we ever prayed was thank you, it would be enough. In truth, that's really what I want to say tonight. Thank you to all of you and the hundreds of others who made the Lloyd College Duffy Community Partnership successful and taught me so much. However, I am not going to take Rabbi Heschel's advice and stop there, because I also know how important it is for gratitude to be specific. So I have 5 thank you notes to share with you tonight. For the past 20 years, the guiding question of the Duffy has been, what makes a good society? I want you to know that you have helped me glimpse the answer to that always evolving question. Through my work with you, I've seen the answer in action, and I'm so grateful. And in this despairing world, I'm also hopeful. So my first thank you note must be to Jim Duffy, who was wise, visionary, pragmatic, endlessly curious, generous, and I use the word tenacious as well. A loyal alum of this college, my mentor and my friend. He guided me through many years and is deeply missed. But he continues with us in spirit tonight through the learning and leadership that has been planted in hundreds of students and partners who rolled up their sleeves and did the hands-on, heads-engaged work that needs to be done. We are so fortunate to have his daughter Corey and his partner Julie Baker with us here tonight, and I've asked Julie to say a few words on Jim's behalf.
Beloit College and the community here of Beloit is amazing, absolutely amazing. If the whole world could be like you and what you have done in this partnership and working together, our world would be different. First of all, Corey, Jim's daughter, and I are so privileged to have been invited here. Jim died about a year and a half ago in his 90s. He didn't want to go, and he fought it, but he was tenacious, and he had more to do. But he really left a wonderful legacy. One of the legacies that he left, well, one of many, is the fact that he valued, when he was president of ABC, he valued partnerships. And he knew that it was very important not to be the person who makes the decisions and tells people what to do. And I can see, and we got a lot of joy out of that, when he obviously went to college here, but that he continued that belief that working together makes a difference. No, as Jim would say, no one person, no one community, no one club or college can do it all. It takes a community and teamwork to do this. And I think that's probably the biggest joy that he got from the Duffy Community Partnership. And personally, it was the biggest joy, one of the biggest joys I had personally seen it evolve. Okay, so there was a lot of luck involved. Probably some of the biggest luck would be Carol Wickersham. I can't even, it's a good thing I'm talking with all of you because I know you get it. And Charles said it so well that of Carol, everything she does, and I love how you were thanking people, and that's typical of you to do something like that. But you're the one knowing the power of partnership and working together that makes it happen. And I remember years ago, I guess it was 20-some years ago, that I first met Charles and Carol and started, I was just kind of tagging along here and saw it work. But I remember thinking, what a great idea this is, the Duffy Partnership. What a phenomenal idea. But I never, ever, as much as I trusted Charles and Carol, plus the leadership here at Beloit College and everybody who's involved, it never dawned on Jim or Corey and myself that it would be so powerful as it has turned out. And it is powerful, and I'm not exaggerating with this at all. It was one of Jim's biggest joys in his life, and I think the friendship that Jim and Carol had way up until the very end, and you need to know this, Carol, brought such joy to Jim. I just hope you know that. And then Charles, when we had that last Zoom thing with you and Carol, he knew he wasn't at his best, but boy, the respect that you gave him during that was just phenomenal. But one thing that Corey and I have talked about this is that what Jim did, he had vision. And even when he was at school here and all of this, he had vision in his career and here. And this is where, toward my later years in my life, and I'd like to give this as a message to the students here, although a lot of you who are students, you can have a vision. It's not going to do any good unless you do it. It just, Nike said, just it. And I think in my life, that's probably one of my biggest regrets, but we learned so well from Jim. He would have a vision, he'd have a vision, then he knew who to work with to have a partnership. And he got, respected that partnership. So I'm hoping so many of you students do it. And this morning, Daniel was sitting here in yours, and I said, just keep doing it. Really, what you all do with the Duffy partnership and your projects really does make a difference. And you are in a beautiful environment here at the Lloyd College. There is this other world out there. And when you leave, though, don't let, and I'm saying this on behalf of Jim, I feel very strongly that Jim wants you to know, but yeah, this is a great place. But when you get out and you get maybe kind of jaded, the real world, all this sort of thing, don't get so jaded that you might lose what you here. The Duffy partnership is so important, and I think all of you who have been involved with it, I guess my request is you keep doing it. Was it Margaret Mead who said, people realize the impact one person might have? I think it was Margaret Mead who said that. So just in conclusion, this is another important thing. Those of you who are from the community, I really applaud you, because talking a little while ago with some of the community people, it does take more work on your part to have a Duffy student come. But as those of you who I spoke to tonight, you all say it's worth it. It makes a difference in the work you do and your mission in life. So really, on Jim's behalf, thank you for being involved. And what a fabulous partnership it is to have students in the community coming together. So I just want you to know how much I admire what all of you are doing. And Charles and Carol, Corey and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This exceeded far more than we ever thought would happen, which is proof that it can keep going. So I do ask those of you in the community and you students, keep doing it, because it does make a difference. Thank you.
Keep doing it. Thank you so much. So, I am going to read my remarks, partly because what I'm going to do is be sharing from the many, many, many student field notes that I've collected over the years. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about what I've learned from you. So out of respect for your time, I'm going to stick to my manuscript, because I know what happens if I go off track here. So my second and most adamant thank you tonight is to all of the students over the years who've taught me more than I could ever possibly have taught them. The Duffys have taught me how to do the Duffy. Jim loved the fact that his name had been turned into both a noun and a verb. The Duffys do the Duffy. The fact that my students have been my teachers is the prime example of a concept that I've coined called the learning stance. As most of you know, it's simply stated that everywhere you are is your classroom, and everyone you meet is your teacher. The challenge is to find the lesson that's there for you. The learning stance is very simple, but it's not easy. And it's more than a concept, it's a practice a practice that couples observation plus reflection and analysis. The learning stance gelled for me in my first year of teaching the Duffy, deriving from diverse places like liberation theology, Paulo Freire, feminist pedagogy, brain research on developmental learning, and a very wise elementary school principal, Sue Green, at what was then Wright Elementary School. She said, "Kids learn by doing and talking about what they do. If we listen to them, our students will teach us how to teach them." And so it continues to be for me. Moreover, what I know is that my students not only teach me, they teach each other. When I began doing the Duffy, it quickly became clear that one of the most important things that I could do was to get out of the way, so that the students could cheer each other on, commiserate about their common challenges, problem solve together. I've watched them grow wise, gain courage, as they taught each other about things like time management, implicit bias, whether or not it was okay to go out and have a beer with one of your clients. They realized that the challenges that they faced were not simply their own personal troubles, but they were shared. They were even, gulp, public issues. They often had historical and structural dimensions which we would then unpack in class. I watched as they began to make all of the important moves to transform them from students into colleagues that I would love to work with. There is nothing better than to watch that transformation. Here's what one of the Duffy alums said about what she learned from her field site and from other students. "I think that the best thing that the Duffy helped me with was putting me in new and scary situations. It helped me be more comfortable walking into a room full of strangers and starting conversations, both from my site experience and from my cohort experience. I also learned that the shared reflection that happens in the Duffy is a really important exercise in critical thinking and understanding yourself. There is not a set of field notes, not a class discussion, not a research project that hasn't taught me something." Let me just share one example of this richness. This is a student who was working with the wise advocates at the Rock County Public Defender's Office. She wrote, "I always learn something from my supervisor, but what I learned today at the jail really opened my eyes." Vanessa was talking to our client, trying to get the information we needed to reduce his possible sentence. I heard her talk about the case in legal language with the lawyers in the office, but when we got to the jail, she changed. From what we had read in class, I knew what she was doing was code switching. She was saying the same stuff, but she was using his language. And even her tone and body language shifted. He was so wary at first, but I could see him begin to uncoil, and he started to make eye contact, and his story began to spill out, and it was a horrible one. But what I realized was that the binary in my head of victim and perpetrator is not either or, but it's both and. This man had done horrible things, but horrible things had been done to him. So do you see what the student did? How sophisticated that was? She observed closely. She watched both her supervisors and the client, and she learned from them. She used concepts that we had been studying in class to make sense of what she was observing, and she had an aha moment. It wasn't until COVID that I started having my students share their field notes with each other. Sometimes I'm a little slow on the obvious. We used Google Docs as a way to overcome our pandemic isolation, and it's a practice I have definitely continued. Why should I be the only one to benefit from these wonderful notes? So it is on the Google Doc, another student responded to that first student. saying, "This is great. Reading your notes, I realized that the conversation at my site moves from informal chit-chat before the meetings to formal conversation during the meetings. They depend on each other, the chit-chat and the meetings. Before the meeting, everyone talks to everyone about sports. I think that the fact that I play football helps me to be accepted at my site. I think someone who isn't interested in sport would have a really hard time working here, no matter how good they would be at their job. This chit-chat is what makes things go. During the meetings, the boss talks and we listen. Now I see what Charles is talking about in courses on sports and social stratification." This leads to my third thank you note of the evening. It is to my colleagues at the college who have worked shoulder to shoulder with me. At the outset, Jim Duffy's vision was championed by Susan Cleverton, working in the office of what is now called Advancement, and Professor Emily Chamley Wright in the economics department before the Duffy shifted into the social department. Without their visionary support, it would not have happened. Additionally, my gratitude towards my colleagues Charles Westerberg and Kate Linenberg know no bounds. They helped me to ground the program sociologically in theory, method, and imagination. They have helped me by offering unfailing collegiality. I can't even begin to tell you how important that has been. Without their wisdom, the Duffy would have been a much lesser thing. I also include many other student, alumni, and faculty collaborators, including many of you who are here, others who could not be here, especially also thanking colleagues in the ACM, which has broadened my horizons, especially my colleague Kathleen, who came up from Knox today. We have engaged in community-based research questions such as, what do medical interpreters wish doctors knew about cultural translation? Really fun project. Do community gardens actually change what kids eat? Great question. Do tax incremental finance districts help stabilize local economies? What do you think? How can dance enhance the well-being of the community? And of course, I'm grateful to the Beloit College administration and trustees, which created my faculty position, have supported my vision, created a position for community-based learning for the wider campus, and have committed to invest in the future of community-based learning here and beyond into the community itself. I owe an extra dollop of gratitude to Charles and Kate and a cadre of students and alumni researchers who have helped me actually research the Duffy itself. Over several summers, we sought the answers to three simple questions. What do students learn through a community-based course like the Duffy? How do they learn it? And is that learning retained and put to use? Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go full-on academic on you. I could, but that's for another time and place, and I've got a whole PowerPoint, so let me know if that's what you'd like. What I want you to know is that, one, do students learn? The answer is yes. They learn from this pedagogical approach, and what they learn is often surprising to them, not gradual and linear, but it comes through the challenge, and then the breakthrough. And aha, now I see. We called it pivot points. Two, how do they learn that? In a whole variety of ways. They learn from their field sites, they learn from their peers, they learn from their professors. Take heart, professors, they're paying attention. They learn from their texts and from the questions that they themselves bring from their own lived experience to the work. Third, and most gratifying to me, Do they retain and use this knowledge? This has been something I really wanted to know. Thanks to Kate Lindenberg's alumni focus groups and surveys, we can say yes with emphatic statistical confidence. We know that this brand of community-based learning shapes careers, motivates civic engagement. Even 13 years out, alums could cite particulars about what they learned in the Duffy. Could a retiring professor ask for anything more? The fourth round of thank yous goes to colleagues whom I've never met, but I've learned from them nonetheless. Colleagues whose texts my students and I mine for wisdom. For instance, I am very grateful to Robert Bellah, sociologist of religion whose profound work on the effects of individualism and capitalism on American institutions gave us the guiding question for the Duffy: what makes a good society? I know it's unusual to thank the scholars on whose shoulders we stand. But what makes the Duffy is its grounding in a discipline that provides the tools to unpack social dynamics. So thank you, Mary Patillo and Alexis de Tocqueville and Mario Luis Small and Adam Smith and Jane Addams and Emile Durkheim and Max Weber and Karl Marx and Randy Stoker and Elizabeth Trinan and Michael Lipsky and Matthew Desmond, and especially thank you C. Wright Mills and W.E.B. Du Bois for helping us to identify the profound coupling of biography and history that lies at the heart of all of our analysis. Listen to how this student uses Mills to wrestle with a profoundly disturbing intersection of racism in the criminal justice system as he works with a program helping men to re-enter society after a stint in prison. The other day, I had the opportunity to sit in on a webinar on problems of housing those re-entering society. There's already a shortage of affordable housing for low-income individuals, which is made worse by the excessively high barriers that exist for people with criminal records. Adequate credit scores, background checks, minimum income requirements, and other specifications make it incredibly difficult for ex-convicts to even consider applying for certain housing. The lack of meaningful opportunities to lift themselves out of their dire straits means that ex-offenders have no option but to slide back into the environment that trapped them in the first place. A constant worry for my supervisor is that no matter what happens in our classroom, the environment that our students return to is one they cannot control. In his essay on the sociological imagination, Mills asks, what type of people prevail in our society and through which processes are they selected? This is one question that pops into my mind whenever I'm at work, because the opposite of that question is also quite insightful. What processes prevail for those who are disadvantaged? I answer processes they have no control over. Racism, redlining, discrimination, just to name a few. Finally, my most important and adamant thank you is to my community partners and co-teachers. As you know, I consider all of you to be adjunct faculty at this esteemed institution because I could not teach what I want my students to learn without you. I could not do it. Thank you so much. You have been unfailingly generous with your wisdom, expertise, time, and access to your organizations. Each semester, I start by talking to the students about the difference between academic learning and community-based learning and how not to trip over the threshold between the two. Sometimes the differences are profound, and sometimes they're very subtle. Entering a corporate boardroom or a healthcare clinic is very different than schlepping into your classroom. We talk about dress code, punctuality, formal and informal registers, personal and professional boundaries, confidentiality, and mandated reporting. But for all our talk, the real learning comes when they enter your spaces and interact with you and those that you work with. Here's an example from a student who's phoning people who are on a waiting list to get into a shelter serving unhoused neighbors. I was calling applicants on the wait list to get more information about their housing situation. I usually never have to go off script because this process becomes more unconscious over time. I'd finished asking my questions and I was getting ready to hang up when the woman on the other line said, "So what now? You're saying you can't do anything to help me?" At that moment, I wasn't sure what to say. The woman's situation was that she had 12 days to find a rental house since her Section 8 housing voucher was expiring. She had already been on her third extension. This was such a specific situation, I wasn't sure how to reply, which only aggravated the caller. I put her on hold and I had my advisor take over. I observed how she handled de-escalating. All my advisor did was listen carefully. She didn't attempt to offer a solution. By the end of the call, the woman was satisfied and wished us a good day. I believe this shows that working in direct service, you need to be agile and balance when to refer people to resources and when to just actively listen. So what have they learned from you? Just about everything. One very important thing that they've learned is you don't need to know everything in order to do the right thing well. One essential difference between classroom learning and community-based learning is the relative lack of control out there in the wilds of the playground or the clinic or the boardroom or city hall. This murkiness is a feature, not a flaw. Unlike the classroom, there's often no right answer, sort of like life. Even the learning goals vary from student to student depending on what they're ready to grasp and what questions they bring to the mix. So how do they figure this out? By listening to themselves and by observing you, by reading deeply and closely, by listening to their other professors, whom they often quote in the field notes. What they see are adults who know their craft, improvising as they face situations which are without any clearly defined roadmap, without any clear outcome. They begin to understand that, ready or not, they are adults too. And to everyone's surprise, they are so ready. This is because you have treated them as colleagues with respect and given them responsibilities with real-world consequence. After 42 semesters, I've begun to learn the rhythm. About a week or two or three into the semester, the students will come to me and complain that they have not been given anything real to do yet. They're kind of bored. And I get a twinkle in my eye and I say, "Really? They haven't put you in charge of their biggest client? You haven't been left in control of the classroom? How many hours have you put in so far?" 12. Well, if you were at a new job, you'd be barely through your first day here, so given this short tenure, the real miracle is that after 90 hours, the Duffys are given anything real to do. And even more miraculous, they actually do it and accomplish amazing things. They write curriculum, they write computer codes, they write case notes. Year after year, they've been entrusted with phenomenal responsibility, and again they have delivered. It's because you've trusted them, and they have proven trustworthy. For instance, here's a quote from Kate's survey of Duffy alums about what this particular alum learned from what she did. This is one of 18 students over the years who've worked with the After School Reading Buddies program. Managing over 40 elementary school students and 30 Beloit College students during an after-school reading program, I learned the critical importance of keeping organized records, being flexible when things don't go as planned, and how to develop rapport with key community stakeholders. Would you not want to employ somebody who had that kind of experience? Another thing they've learned from you is that everyone, supervisors and interns alike, are shaped by social facts of identity, history, and institutional structure. Working with you confirms what they have suspected and perhaps feared. Grown-ups do not have all the answers. But they also learn that that's okay. That a mistake is only a failure if you fail to learn from it. They learn how to learn from their mistakes. What they see in you as they watch you is not perfection, but something much more important. It's a blend of humility and judgment, so they can begin to understand what it means to be a professional in all its mundane glory. For instance, this student is watching carefully as her supervisor facilitates a difficult community meeting. Soon this student will be stepping up to the plate to do the very same thing. I noticed my supervisor was trying her very best to get ahead of an unruly participant. She dropped any encouraging body language when he was speaking. When asking a new question, she restated previous responses and emphasized that he was repeating himself. I will call him Jack. When this guy continued to talk endlessly, she would interrupt with thank yous or let's hear from someone else. But these strategies were not working well. They didn't stop him from largely derailing the hour-long focus group. I feel there were two big sociological takeaways from this experience. One, Jack was a white man, and my supervisor is a woman of color. If she had been a man, I really doubt that Jack would have shown such little respect. Another takeaway from this is the power of social norms, a la Durkheim. Jack was being a social deviant. He was breaking the normative expectations that we have to share speaking time and pay attention to social cues. However, calling out that behavior would mean being a bit of a social deviant as well. And that's hard. My supervisor said that after the meeting, she wished she'd been more straightforward with him, but in that moment, it was difficult to see how she could have done that without escalating into a messy conflict. It made me wonder, what would I do? I really have a hard time with that kind of norm breaking. Don't we all? What you may not know is that over the years that I have been placing Duffy students at field sites, I have had a field site as well. As they write their 5 sets of field notes every semester, I try to write notes too. Okay, I don't always get my assignment done, and rarely on time. I probably would deserve a C- if I was being generous with myself. Over the years, my Duffy sites have been in order: 6 years as the Clinton communities, serving on the Clinton Community School Board, 5 years as a Rock County jail chaplain, and a 2-year COVID sabbatical. Ugh, community-based learning online is not pretty. And now I'm serving on the Board of Family Services to lend help to build a transitional living facility for unhoused Rock County kids and their caregivers. I felt like if I was asking my students to take a risk, to stretch, to venture out into an unknown context, I should do it too. I should take the learning stance seriously and continue to try to learn from other places and other people. So here's what I wrote in one of my first sets of field notes. In recent weeks, I find myself chewing on a concept I'm calling the learning stance. It's an opposite of what I'm reading in the literature. While there's a lot of good stuff out there in the so-called service learning literature, I find myself bristling at the term itself. There's much of it about sending students out into the community to serve those people, about how to be do-gooders. In my former work, I was the recipient of a lot of well-meaning do-gooders, and it wasn't fun. What I already know about the Beloit community is it is not broken, in need of fixing. It is not a problem in need of solving, and it is certainly not in need of well-intentioned outsiders with a lot of book learning to tell them how to do their jobs. The community is a classroom, and there's a lot of wisdom out there. So here's a quote from something I wrote more recently when I was learning from the women who are inmates at the Rock County Jail. Tonight I was allowed to bring communion to the women for the first time. It has taken 3 years to obtain this permission from the sheriff's office. I had to bring a can of Welch's to pour into the Dixie cups and a sealed packet of saltines, which I snagged from a restaurant. We had to do the sacrament in the dimly lit hallway between the pods or cell blocks so that the surveillance cameras could make sure I wasn't slipping in any contraband. This meant we didn't have any kind of a table, so the women made one with their hands. As we started to get set up, the young corrections officer who had a Bible verse tattooed on his arm was monitoring us between the dark glass. From behind the dark glass. He said, "Can I take communion with y'all?" And I said, "Sure, come on out." He said, "Well, ma'am, I can't do that. I gotta monitor y'all." Laverne said, "Well, right, I'll make you a doggy bag." He laughed, and then I broke the saltines into pieces, and the crumbs went everywhere, and then I said the traditional words, and their eyes were opened, and they recognized God. Cherise said, "I bet God wishes he were here." And Angela said, "Well, I think she is." And we laughed, and the crumbs went everywhere, and in that moment, I learned a lot about community, and theology, and sociology, and grace, and equality in the eyes of God, if not in the eyes of the law. Well, I could go on, but I want to finish so that there's time for you all to ask questions that you want to have answers to and give rebuttal if that's needed, or comment. And again, the most important thing I want to say to you is thank you. But there is one more thing. As we try to look down the road at the future of society, there are a lot of reasons to think the good society is a nice figment of our imagination. A lot of reasons to be cynical and dispirited. The pundits and the polls keep telling us the trends aren't good for just about anything, from life expectancy to wealth disparity to climate disruption, but trends and data are not the only ways to know things. What I've been privileged to learn from my students is that the future of this world is in some very compassionate and competent hands. Hands-on, heads engaged Duffy alums have rolled up their sleeves and are out there doing the essential work of building a good society. We can take heart and we can join them. And so, as is appropriate, I want to let a former student have the last word from her field notes. Counting down to my last week and my last day at the Duffy site, honestly, I could not stop from being drowned in my regret, as I often think I have not done enough for the team, for the company. I was just getting to know this place, barely touching the surface of my position's responsibility, trying to learn everything that the team offers. As much as I feel sadness, however, the gratitude for all the amazing parts of my internship, including my supervisor, my small project, and every interaction overcomes me. It's been a huge opportunity for me to be a part of the organization, contributing my work and knowledge to provide insight for the sake of the community. I know that whatever I do in the future will be better and richer because of this opportunity. Thank you. So now's your chance to ask questions, say your piece. I think there are microphones somewhere here to pass around, but I'm not completely confident about that. But I think probably we can shout out. I'm going to ask Charles to help identify questioners. Looks like someone's getting maybe a microphone down from a box. Nope, they don't seem to have one. So you're going to have to talk loud. Use your best cheerleader voice. Okay.
Thank you for everything, Professor. Thank you for not only teaching something, but stuff that I learned that I would use in my life, all the life knowledge. I have one question for you. What are you going to do next?
So you're welcome. And you did the work, so. What am I going to do next? Well, that's still to be discovered. I'm going to be working on some community projects. I'm going to be doing some writing. I'm going to be doing some painting. And I'm going to be living into my retirement. I don't really have a roadmap, but that's pretty typical, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, microphones. That'll make it much better.
So Kara, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for me. And I never asked you this question, but you're very influenced by sociology.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested, when did you first learn sociology, or when was your first experience with sociology? I don't think I've ever asked you this.
That's a great question. So I am not trained in sociology. I'm self-taught. So my degrees are in art, religious studies, and philosophy. And I have, for the first 10 years of the Duffy, I read nothing but sociology because I felt like such an imposter. So I'm self-taught, and I'm taught by my colleagues in the college who have guided me. I really came in to do the practicum work and had done this in another place. So that's how I encountered sociology. But as a lot of recent converts to things, I'm the truest of the true believers.
Hey, can I interject just quickly, if I may? This is Charles from the back of the room. Don't let Carol fool you. She sat in on many classes as she started out. She did all the readings, had many, many questions, and it didn't just come by osmosis, it came through hard work.
Yeah, there was that work thing, yeah. Down here in the front, and then out there in the back.
Right here. Hi, Carol.
Yeah.
Thank you, just like everybody else. We are so appreciative of you. This question is less for your responsibility, because I think everybody here agrees that you've done quite enough for the program, and more than anybody could have anticipated. But do you see this program coming to light in other campuses and other communities and being brought in? Because I think it's very valuable for not just the college, but for the community overall.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. I've had the opportunity to talk regionally with my ACM colleagues, and I've also participated in a variety of national conferences, done some publishing. So I've helped to disseminate some ideas and engage with others who have sharpened what I think. In that way, and Charles and I are working on some writing projects, so we'll be continuing that into the future, because I do think it's a powerful form of learning. Really and truly, Kate's research with alumni
we got a really robust response rate from the survey and great quotes that convinced me that it works. And so I'm eager to share it with others because I think it provides people with powerful tools for civic engagement and leadership. And the world really, really needs you, Emma, and colleagues. The world needs you. And this is serious stuff. The world needs you to step up fully and engage. The problems are big, but the possibilities are bigger. So I'm ready to talk to anybody who wants to tool up in this way.
So, just like everyone else, I also want to give a big thank you to you, Carol. When I found out that this was going to be your last semester teaching it, I knew I had to take a stab at community-based learning. My question for you is, the question guiding the Duffy program is, what makes a good society? Do you feel like you found just one answer to that, or multiple based on different students' experiences through the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are all kinds of glimpses. I mean, I think a lot of times the way the Duffy works is it's like looking into the facets of like a gem or a prism. It's lots of different angles coming together. But I've always really liked a quote, which actually is in Bella's book by a guy named Dennis McCann. And what it says is, what is the common good? It's the search for the good in common. So it's what we do together. And we're constantly creating it and recreating it. So I think that for me, it's collaboration and collegiality and the respectful partnering that make the good society. So I don't know that that really answers your question, but I think it would be presumptuous for me to say what it looks like for me is the same as what it looks like for people in other times and places from other perspectives.
Yeah, another thank you. So many thank yous. Because of you and your program, I feel like I have so much more empathy, so much more respect for everyone. And yeah, you just really opened my eyes to the world and how it works. And I also credit my first job to you. I don't know if you know that, but yeah, I credit my first job to you. So thank you.
It makes me feel like Rumpelstiltskin or something.
So thank you for that. Yeah, I think we've all learned a lot through your program, and it sounds like you have too. So I'm curious if you have any advice for people going into the world now, based on what you've learned.
Well, I kind of like Julie's advice of do it. It needs to be active. I guess the piece of advice I've been giving people lately is to always remember you're not alone. And from my discipline, so it's no secret I'm a Presbyterian pastor, you don't need to save the world. That job's been filled. So, but you need to participate in the work with other people. Because if you think that you have to do it by yourself, you will burn out and be dispirited. And sometimes we forget that there are lots and lots and lots of good people doing lots and lots of good things. And it's particularly important if you're the kind of person who's doing policy work, you forget about the people who are down in the grassroots in the trenches. If you're in the trenches, you forget about the people who are trying to change the structures through policy, economic growth, whatever the pieces are upriver, to remember always that there are allies out there, and you need to seek them out because this is not a short-term gig. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol. We've heard it, but thank you so much for what you've done for me, for all the Duffys, the college, the community, the world. So we know the Duffy is taking a sad little hiatus for the next academic year. So when we do find somebody who will end up taking over the program, what do you think is the most important piece of advice that you'd be able to pass on to them?
Well, first of all, a bunch of my colleagues are picking up parts of this, and we'll be offering community-based courses and working with wonderful partners. So it's going to be a different kind of a year, but there are going to be lots of opportunities for students in the community. So I want to encourage all of you to look for those opportunities and to pursue them. And if you don't find the one you want, then you should create it for yourself, because you've got faculty members who are willing to do special projects and sponsor internships and make things happen for yourself. My advice to my colleague is that the community is always evolving, and they should do it their way. I hope that they'll find that what I have talked about with the learning stance and is useful to them, but I have trust and faith that it will evolve in the directions that it needs to go.
I had a question about the work. Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
I loved so much collaborating with you. I have a question about how you enter into community and create these partnerships. So you're doing this work with your students in some sort of classroom way, in some sort of an academic way, where you're reading some things and you're talking about them and things like that. Do you bring or do you share some of those readings, this learning stance? Do you share the model that you have for writing reflections with the community partner? Do they know that side of it? Have you ever done that?
I've done some of it. It depends on the partner and what they're wanting to engage with. I've actually co-taught courses with community partners, and that's been very satisfying. Having been a community partner for as many years as, so I spent 20 years on one side of the fence and 20 years on the other, I'm really trying to be as respectful as I can of the amount of time that they're putting into their work. And so I try to streamline when they offer evaluations, when we do the service learning agreements. And I've been trying, it's been hard since COVID, to visit in their offices as much as possible so that we can let the conversation go where it needs to go. So yeah, that's to say it depends a lot on the particularities of partners. I don't think I have any community partners who are not like the busiest people in this community. They tend to be the ones who say yes, and they make very good mentors. Not everyone who's doing great work in the community is cut out to be a partner. Sometimes, a lot of times, our calendars just don't mesh, or our students' skill sets are not what they need. Sometimes they just are not inclined towards teaching. They do great work, but that's not their call. So that's to say, we kind of have to feel out the partnership and find out whether it's going to work. Sometimes we'll do a semester and say, that was interesting, but that's not going to work. Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. In this moment, what would you want to say to Jim Duffy?
Thank you. I miss you. Your hand is all over this program. Yeah. He was really an amazing, generous, and good listener. He always had questions, and completely amazing memory for student work. I mean, he would ask me about, so, that kid who was working there, what's he doing now? I'm like, how do you keep track of that? You're encyclopedic. So but that helped me pay better attention. So, yeah, I'm just really, really, really deeply grateful. Yeah.
Hi, Carol. Thank you, just like everybody else. My question is a little simple, but I want to know what advice you have for us to network and how you maintain the partnerships that you had for so long.
Yeah, networking. You guys were doing a great job. Current Duffys, I think you all got an A for tonight. Yay! Nice work. We practiced in class to make sure we knew how to do this thing. Yeah, Janae. I guess what I would say is be genuinely interested in what other people have to say. It's sometimes just as simple as that. You'll learn stuff, and what Sue Green's, advice about your students teaching you how to teach, your partners will teach you how to partner if you really listen carefully. So that would be, don't fake interest, but that doesn't mean walk away if you're not interested. It means that you need to practice what we've done in class about attentiveness. So to be really paying attention takes discipline and practice. And so if you want to network well, you need to really care about understanding someone else's perspective. That doesn't mean you always agree with it. That's a whole other matter. But can you understand where they're coming from and why they might have come to the point of view that they come to? It just makes life a lot more interesting, too.
Hello, Carol. From literally hundreds of first and second graders at Wright School and Todd School, I just have to give our deepest gratitude to not only you, the Duffy interns, plus all of the volunteers that they round up, and I don't even know how they do that, but if you are someone who has been with us at Todd, our kids love you, and they look up to you, and they think you are the greatest grown-up since sliced bread. So continue to keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much, Carol.
Yeah, well, thank you. I tell students that the best antidepressants on campus are the Reading Buddies program. So if you can go read Dr. Seuss with second graders and still be sad, it'll pass. It'll pass.
Thank you, Carol, for everything that you've done for me. Can you describe what Jim Duffy's original vision was? We heard some great things about what you have learned from this, but I'm curious what originally Jim had envisioned for this program.
I think Julie's probably the better person to answer. Maybe we should give her the mic. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to take a stab at it? No. Well, actually, I wasn't there at the very beginning. So originally, he was working with the economics department, and so what he wanted to do was he wanted to give back to the school, and he wanted to inculcate civic virtue and leadership in the next generation. And so it took a couple of iterations before the program started to solidify in a way that he and I both felt really good about. So originally it was a much smaller program, doing kind of project-based economic kinds of things in the community. But Jim wanted it to grow bigger. The one thing he was very adamant about is he didn't want us to produce a bunch of white papers. He did not want a think tank. He wanted people to roll up their sleeves and get some stuff done. So I heard that loud and clear, and that gelled really well with my vision too. So, and I also think it works really well for undergraduates. I think undergraduates are at they're at a place developmentally where they're really ready to make the leap into adulthood. They're full force of their physical vigor. They want to do stuff, not just think about doing stuff. And I think it really satisfies all of those needs. So, I mean, the Duffy wasn't the only thing Jim did. He helped to start the national literacy movement. He worked to infuse ethics into media. I mean, his vision was informed by Beloit College, informed by his own roots in good Midwest farm soil, and so yeah, he was a great man. And Matt Walthius was a student, but now is a supervisor. We have quite a few of those. That's really satisfying to me. I think maybe we should take two more questions. I think people are starting to. So if you've got one or more, two more, I don't want to keep people too long.
Bring us home, Mason.
Sorry, I'll ask another question. So I think really kind of the hardest part, at least I would guess, is to kind of get this thing started. Can you describe some of the challenges that came from like when you were first getting this thing started, like making the partners, and how you overcame them?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the projects I'm working on, this is completely new to me. My mentor from graduate school, who's now 87 years old, Glenda Hope, in San Francisco. She was like the Forrest Gump of all social action in San Francisco for 50 years. She's an amazing woman. There's a wonderful group of young documentary filmmakers who are doing a film about her, and they asked me if I would interview her for this film. So we just spent over spring break 3 days filming. I've never done a film before. I'm not on film, thank goodness. I'm just asking her the questions, and we just had a 3-day conversation. She was amazing. And one of the pieces of advice she kept saying, because she did so many things, she said, well, you don't have to know how to get it done. You just need to get it going. And you'll figure it out as you go along. She's like a true blue entrepreneur. She just like gets stuff started. And she's like, put the vision out there. So, for instance, she has built a safe house for women who've been sex trafficked. And she went door to door to door to get money to do this, and everybody said no, 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 no. And finally she said, I sat down with the group of us who were trying to do this, and we said, well, it's just not the right time. We're not going to do this thing. We'll wait until. She didn't know what she was waiting for. And the next day on the news, 2 women were found in shallow graves who had been sex trafficked, and she said, well, that's it. We got to do it right now. So she just went and knocked on doors, and the person who is the heiress to the Marshall Field fortune, she said, you need to give us money, and she wrote a check. So sometimes the vision drives the resources. You have to just, if it's the right thing to do, you have to just do it. So I haven't done anything quite that bold. But I do know that if I go to talk to community partners and listen to what they want to get done in the community, and say, well, do you think a student might be able to help with that? Could learn from that, could take your vision from here to other places. Oftentimes that's what needs to happen. It's just that simple. It's the conversations that get going. But it's the vision that drives it. And this vision of what makes a good society, it's not just purely pragmatic. It's transcendent. And I think that transcendence is really important for me. Without it, I would never be able to do this work. No. thank you all for coming. Such great questions. I feel like Susan Sarandon.